Citadels of Power, the West African Renaissance. Aisha Ayensu is the founder and creative director of the internationally acclaimed luxury fashion label Christy Brown, a ready-to-wear brand designed for women to feel confident and be the truest version of themselves. It is proudly made in Ghana. Fatima Babakura is the cover star of Forbes Africa's 30 Under 30 list for 2022 and founder of Timabi Global Resources, a platform that seeks to inspire aspiring accessory designers. Fumi Adewara, founder and CEO of Mobi Health International, is passionate about changing the provision of healthcare to underserved communities. This British-Nigerian physician and Cambridge-trained bioscientist is a multi-award-winning entrepreneur and a globally recognized telehealth expert. And the moderator is CNBC Africa anchor Tanya Habimana.
The region of the continent that has driven, or rather attracted, quite a number of investment flows, attention, from music to business. It seems that West Africa is garnering more and more attention, and this is why this conversation had a panel of its own. Now, I'd like to welcome my panelists. You ladies are absolutely gorgeous. Let's give them a round of applause as we start off this conversation. Now, when we talk and look into West Africa and talk about finance, investment, the startup ecosystem that is just completely exploding, we're talking very much in the now. But I want to start with you, Aisha. I mean, you started your business more than 15 years ago. What was it like? Did you also feel that there was a vibrancy to the region?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Tanya. Wow. So the brand started in 2008. And I always say that one of the reasons why Christy Brown was even birthed was because of what was happening on the continent around that time. Everyone remembers the Africa Rising movement. There was so much sentiment around, like positive sentiment around the continent. People were moving back, and you were seeing more and more Africans doing well, just conquering in their different fields. So it made me feel like I want to be a part of this movement, you know, and through what? My passion, which was fashion. So we've seen it before. My only thing is, let's not miss it. Let it not be another 15 years.
Yeah.
And then we say we're talking about a rebirth and a renaissance all over again. And hopefully, not hopefully, I'm actually quite optimistic that it is the time, just because of even where technology is now. When I started Christy Brown, there was no Instagram. Imagine. So, there's so many modes by which businesses and brands are getting awareness or even getting known globally. And it's through the power of like the internet and connectivity and just where we are at now. So we can't dispute the fact that, yeah, it's a rebirth, but it's here to stay.
Absolutely. Now, Fatima, I want to direct my attention to you. You have started your company on your own. You're a Forbes 30 Under 30. But your story is not a typical story of a northern Nigerian woman, is it? The climate, the traditions, cultural, would make it quite different, quite something else. How has been your experience in setting up your business?
So thank you for having me, guys. Honestly, I would say that for me, like, it's not very typical of a northern Nigerian girl to, get into business, succeed and be very public about it. And so when I made the cover for Forbes 30 Under 30, what it did was, a lot of people started reaching out to me saying, because of you, I want to pursue my passion in, whether it be career-wise or just be a businesswoman. And, what is very interesting is the very men who are usually the ones who hinder women from, pursuing passion based on culture would reach out to me and say, I want you to mentor my daughters. And the reason for that is because they've seen that I've been able to, not lose my values as a Northern Nigerian woman, but also achieve success. So the fact that I can balance it and do well in it, is something that they really want. And so for me, it wasn't easy when I started, but I think the foundation that I had, the parents, the environment where I grew up was a bit different. And so that helped me. And then Forbes, of course, really did put the spotlight on me. So thank you, guys.
I'm sure on that. And Dr. Fumi, your business is quite an interesting business. Very, very young. It's 3 years now. It started just before COVID, delivering mobile telehealth services. How was it received when you initially started it?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. Yes, before the COVID pandemic, telemedicine was on a very slow pace of adoption globally. Even in the US, where you have an established telehealth sector, it was really low. I know that then when I started, my vision was to democratize access to healthcare, leveraging technology. I trained in Nigeria. I personally had my own health challenges when I was a child, and I could have become one of the statistics of those who are not here today. So that is very personal reason and the reason behind my passion. So when I left for the UK, I always thought I was going to come back. We usually get lots of calls from Nigeria asking for second opinion. There was a shortage of doctors and the rest. So I saw technology as an enabler that could really help Africa leapfrog her health challenges, particularly those in the rural, hard-to-reach areas. So yes, and before COVID started, I was trying to find a solution off the shelf that I could quickly deploy to the market. There were none that were suitable. They were cost prohibitive. They were not designed for the African narrative. We had multiple pain points, long distance travel. 95% of people in Africa have no health insurance, exposure to counterfeit medicines, and long distance travel. So those solutions were not built for Africa. So I had to use my knowledge from Africa and my exposure from being in the NHS, knowing how things are done in saner societies. So built a solution that spoke to those narratives. So by the time COVID started, we had our finger on the pulse, and we were ready to deploy. So we used our platform to support the national and the global pandemic response, providing virtual consultation. I have a pool of doctors, not just in Africa, but leveraging the diaspora medical community. Because today, more than 70% of healthcare workers who train in Africa leave the continent in search of greener pasture. And we need to be able to leverage technology to bring them back. Whatever we need to do to change the narrative today in Africa will take us decades to achieve. But technology is quicker. You have a cough, I can see over a teleconsultation. 90% of my consultation and diagnosis will be made that way. So we built an integrated platform that spoke to that narrative. Now, at that time, when we launched, we were also trying to fundraise. So the lockdown didn't really help us. So we had to really think outside the box. How do we sustain the business while there was no funding? Opportunity came because there was COVID-19 testing, and we quickly joined the UK government testing platform. I think we were the only Nigerian or African company on that platform. We had no lab. We only had an online presence. And that year, with the COVID testing, we generated a revenue in excess of £400,000. The following year, we then piloted and pioneered telemedicine in the Nigerian Air Force, and that was the first of its kind. So we've seen a massive change in the attitude of people to the adoption of virtual health telemedicine because of the COVID pandemic, and I think that's one of the silver linings.
And quite a journey, firstly, and congratulations to the three of you. What I particularly like is how you've managed to bring in your experience outside of the continent and merge it with, well, your roots and the leveraging of the diaspora. Now, when we talk about diaspora, I can't help but think about Ghana's Year of the Return. And I'm quite curious to hear from you, Aisha, how that impacted your business. And also, I happen to have met somebody who is a member of the diaspora who worked for you. I met this person in Ghana. So how are you leveraging and how is that impacting your business and this West African renaissance?
So I must commend our government for this Year of Return initiative. the world can see that it's just a foresight, right, of just, opening our doors to the diaspora and just allowing that to even affect our economies was phenomenal. I think the first one was in 2019. And when I tell you, everyone, down to even the lady who sold, she sells batik behind our store somewhere in Usu, was like, when is it happening again? Because she made so much money in that short period. Even people who sell sachet water on the streets benefited from it. For us as a brand, Christy Brown, so we're based in Accra, Ghana. Our manufacturing is in Ghana. And, we've done quite a bit, on the continent. You become a bit of a big fish in a small pond. But even having that influx of people coming in, hearing about the brand, creating that brand awareness now, they go back to their respective countries, and it's organic. The growth that has happened since then. But it also takes businesses like ours and brands like ours to be prepared, because there will be, like I said, waves like this, and there will be initiatives like this. But it's up to us to build robust businesses that are ready to take advantage of any opportunities that come in. Otherwise, we, just remain sitting ducks, and then people come in, you get robbed of whatever resources you have, and then they go out there. But if we are intentional and diligent about, like I said, building robust businesses that will stand the test of time, that we're committed to building our own super brands on the continent, then it's easy for us to actually do business. Versus it being a charity case or, oh, look at this beautiful thing I discovered in Africa. But it's important that we create our own ecosystem that is rife.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about, we could give her a round of applause. I want to talk about the value of brand Africa, brand made in Africa. And particularly when it comes to retail and fashion, we saw many actually stating that the value of brand Africa was very often put to the side in replacement of brand Europe or brand Dubai, that somehow we devalued our very own brands. Fatima, is this something that you've experienced?
Actually, no, because when I started my brand, I was very intentional. I wanted to make bags that I could carry around. I love beautiful things, so if it's not fine, I can't carry it. So I really wanted to make sure that, we made the bags that the quality was at par with, the brands that we were used to buying, if not better. And so it was very quick for people to understand that although this is, an African brand, we could compete anywhere in the world. And that is what we've built so far, and we continue to build. Is that, we care about the craftsmanship, the details, and everything. And I think just because it's made in Africa doesn't mean that, it's not, of value. And that is what we've tried to build with the brand. And, if you look at our bags, you'd see.
We love that. Absolutely love that. Dr. Funmi, what about you? No, it's not a brand per se, but your operations are in the UK, but you are providing a service to the continent. How has that been perceived by your customers in terms of the perception of your Africanness?
So, first, healthcare is quite different. We have shortage of healthcare workforce in Africa, and it's the reality that we have to live with. When I started off, I started off bootstrapping the company. Trying to raise funding, I got funding from friends, families, and then angel investors. But when it got to that point when I needed to scale, getting funding became a bit difficult. First, I started off very intentionally, making sure that Africa was the focus. So I incorporated Mobi Health Nigeria way ahead of Mobi Health UK. So it was during the process of trying to get funding, and it was proving very difficult, that we were advised to incorporate our headquarters in the UK. And I think many startups can actually allude to the fact that you get an edge when it comes to the fact that you have your headquarters in the US or in the UK. Actually, they promote that, Western investors, because it does give them some kind of reassurance and validation. So we had to incorporate Mobi Health UK as a parent company. And immediately, it's not even just from the Western investors, the biases, it's actually from African investors. So those who were very reluctant initially to bring in money, as soon as we incorporated in the UK, the money started coming. So it's not just a problem of the Western investors. It's a general problem. But I think things are changing, and I think that's the renaissance for us. Things are changing. If you look at the funding, there's been a lot of capital flow to Africa despite the global economic downturn, double-digit dip across other parts of the world. But in Africa, we're seeing massive investment coming into Africa because there's a lot of changes that are going on. If you look, excuse me, if you look microscopically, you will find out that actually those investments are coming in from Africa investment firms investing in African businesses. For the first time in 2021, African investment firms outnumbered European investors. So that's a big renaissance. Things are changing. Who are these investors? They are diasporas, they are Africans. Who are then seeing the value? Africa is very attractive. We have a youthful, big population that is going to reach, a substantial 1.3 billion right now. But half of African continent will be in the middle class and upper class. So we have the purchasing power. So the world recognizes that, and I think things are now changing. But initially, when I started off, it was not that easy.
Yeah, and you touched upon something quite...
No,
please go ahead.
I wanted to chime in on this brand Africa narrative. And to be honest, we all need to commit to excellence. It's not excellence so that we are accepted by anyone else, but even for ourselves, right? And it's time for us to excellence in every sphere of endeavor, whether it's with our brands, the structures, if it's corporate governance, is how prepared are we, even for these VC firms that are coming in, just so that, again, we're not robbed, but we are also affecting and shaping the brand Africa that we desire to see, versus expecting people to, well, just take us seriously, and we're just telling you to take us seriously. No, we need to do the work internally and just commit to excellence in everything we do.
Yeah, I like that. And I think definitely a round of applause, because we want to have a brand Africa that is not just we're buying African for the sake of buying African.
Exactly.
We want to buy African because it's exceptional, because it's great, because it represents who we are. Now, in light of that, Fatima, you started your business and you've now become a role model to many young Northern Nigerian and wider women. When you were starting your business, did you have role models, mentors that you looked up to?
100%. So for me, I think mentorship was in the form of parenting. I'm not sure if my parents were very intentional with it, but they did a good job. So, very early on, they wanted well-rounded kids. So we would be the kids that would go to Western education, and then right after we go to Islamic school, and then right after that, Saturdays were for fun. So we had a really good balance of everything, and we were good at everything. And so very early on, I realized you could do everything and be it all, and you didn't have to choose one or the other. So, watching my mom be the wife, the mom, and also be the driver, school drop-offs, all of that, and own a business, it wasn't really unusual for me. So I knew very early on that I could do it if I really wanted to do it. It wasn't the norm for Northern Nigeria, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Lagos, and the environment was different. And thank God my parents were different. So, it was quite easy for me to just understand that, if I wanted to do it, I could. So my role models would definitely be my parents. And then growing up, starting the business, you see people like Madam Amina J. Mohammed, who's also from, Northern Nigeria, and you realize, she's got global success, but she hasn't changed who she is. And, you could just do it all. You can be an African girl, you can be a successful business owner. You don't have to pick one or the other.
Dr. Funmi, I see you nodding. How about you? What role has mentorship played in your business?
Well, I think being in the UK gave me some added advantage and access, but I spent most of my time in Africa building the solution, especially for rural areas. There weren't ready-made role models on ground. We had to, I think I did intentionally seek role models. I approached quite a few women. They were not necessarily in the health tech space. But things are changing now. So we've been fortunate to be part of the Africa Investment Forum. and we had access to female investors. So yes, mentorship has played a very big role. There were dark days. There were times that you couldn't pay employee salaries. There were people who doubted because you're a woman and you're operating in a male-dominated environment, you have to prove yourself over and over again. It does sometimes feel like you're on trial compared to our male counterpart, even though you deliver better metrics. So being able to speak to someone about this and getting the encouragement played a huge role in encouraging us to carry on.
That's quite powerful what you're saying, that you feel like you constantly had to prove yourself, you're on trial, and it speaks to perseverance. It speaks to the ability to get back up and to keep going. Now, in your journey, Aisha, you've been doing this for quite a while. What has been your stick to be able to get back up, to be able to keep going?
Wow, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that how Christy Brown started was a bit of my form of activism, right? Like, I'm going to show the world that, yeah, we can build a global luxury brand right here from the continent, and it's going to be excellent. So that was the sentiment with which I built the brand. So it was passion-driven. And then over time, with seeing the growth of the brand and just organic growth of the brand and just interacting with the women that we interact with, the why of Christy Brown was formed, it became even clearer that it's really about positioning the African woman. Because I realized that, listen, when women are confident in themselves and they are confident in who they are and where they're from, I am telling you, there is no stopping them, because there's a certain level of confidence that they enter the boardroom with, or they go into certain deals with, that comes from within. Now, one might say, oh, but fashion is just about clothes. But when you feel good, when you look good, you feel good. And then when you feel good, you're able to, step into certain rooms that nobody even expected you to enter. So I'll have women come to me and say, I have women who would say, oh, I had this intimidating board meeting and I wore my Christy Brown jacket and I walked in there and I gave the presentation. I'm like, oh, girl. So it became about that movement, right? And about how these women will now shape the narrative of the continent. So that's definitely a motivating factor for me. The name Christy Brown is my grandmother's name. So she was a seamstress. She never had a fancy fashion brand. All of this fancy stuff you guys are doing, it wasn't that. She was a seamstress. And I named the brand after her to honor her legacy. So in that case, you have all these factors at play. You're carrying your grandmother's legacy on your back. You can't fail. Then it's the women that you're interacting with every day and seeing the transformation in their lives. And our staff, because our factory is based in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Accra. It's called Koligono. We employ over 78 or so staff. And just what it does for the community, just even being there, and the number of people we've been able to employ and seeing the transformation, it is phenomenal. So if that doesn't motivate me every morning, I don't know what to.
And if that doesn't motivate us, I don't know what will. We truly have ladies here that are impacting their communities and that are shaping the generation to come. I'd like you all to join me in giving a round of applause to my wonderful panelists. This was a fantastic conversation, and we wish you all the best going forward.